Dariel is your ugly weak loser who gets fired from his job at the demon army and becomes a shuddering loner. His miserable life changes when he comes across a beautiful girl with big plot and decides to clap her to live a peaceful life. However, before any of this, Dariel is told by Bashbarza that he is fired and is relieved of his duties as an assistant of 4 generals. The other generals start roasting him as well, and Bashbarza mentions that Dariel holds the lowest rank in the demon army and it was a mistake to hire him in the first place. Furthermore, he can't even use magic, but Dariel tries to argue that the former general, Granbarza, assigned him this role. However, Bashbarza couldn't care less as Granbarza has already retired. In the end, Dariel accepts his fate and walks away. On his way out, Dariel thinks about how humans and demons have fought together, and the only thing that makes demons different is their ability to use magic. Just then, Rizit arrives and asks Dariel about his duty, but Dariel replies that he got fired and walks away. Following that, Dariel has been wandering aimlessly around the jungle and thinks that he might pass away before starting a new life. He then notices a girl staring at him and realizes that she is being chased by a monster. Luckily, Dariel manages to hold the monster off, thinking about how it's the job of a soldier to protect a lady. Just when Dariel tries to attack, his hunger catches up and he gets punched by the monster. Eventually, he finds a dagger lying beside him and swallows his pride to use a weapon made by humans. This results in Dariel stabbing the monster and eventually defeating it. The girl then compliments Dariel for fighting like the hero who was deemed the strongest human. With that being said, Dariel starts to go away but is grabbed by the girl who asks him to come to her village. Malika eventually takes him to her village called Lux and introduces her parents to him. Dariel realizes that he is in the middle of enemy territory and they might clap him if his identity is found out. Malika questions the reason he was in the forest, and Dariel informs her that he was fired and had to leave his previous home. This makes Malika tear up and she can't believe that such an amazing person has to go through this. She then offers him the chance to live in the village and asks her parents, who agree to let him stay as well. But Dariel is still cautious about his real identity being found out. Just then, he notices Malika's milkers and gets locked in. Dariel keeps on staring at them and eventually agrees to stay in the village. He then asks them for food and after dinner, lies in his own bedroom. Soon after, Malika knocks on his door and mentions how she has never been saved by a man before and thanks him for what he did. The next morning, Malika's dad has a job for Dariel and he wants him to become an adventurer. However, Dariel starts asking him for other kinds of jobs, but her father pressures him to register at the guild, reminding Dariel that only humans can register in a guild. Suddenly, he starts making up excuses about back pain and Malika forcefully registers him. This makes a magic circle envelop his body and a symbol is formed on his palm. Dariel can't believe that he is actually a human as he was raised among demons. A long time ago, he was saved by the demon general, Lord Granbarza, and started working as a soldier. But he was then fired by his son and is now living in a human village. Back in the present, Malika's father decides to teach him the basics of adventuring, and Malika warns Dariel as her dad used to be an adventurer. He starts off by informing Dariel about aura, which is something an adventurer can infuse in their weapon to fight. Dariel picks up a sword that reminds him of his training with Lord Granbarza. Luckily, he manages to infuse aura in her father, and Vil tells him about the types of auras including hit, protect, sting, and slash. They start off with a slash and he asks Dariel to slash a lumber. After looking at Malika's talents, Dariel gets the motivation he needs and manages to slash the lumber flawlessly.
Yeah, boy.
And Vil is impressed and then asks him to use sting. Dariel tries to hit an apple with a bow but ends up destroying a part of the forest. Malika buries him in her talents as a reward, and Vil can't believe how Dariel can be this talented. Next up is hit, and Dariel hits a boulder with a hammer, leaving Vil depressed as he thinks about how his whole career as an adventurer was useless. Lastly, it is time to protect, and Vil gets ready to strike Dariel with a hammer made out of iron. He strikes Dariel with all his might but ends up embarrassing himself instead. In the end, Vil reveals that Dariel possesses a perfect aura, which is something beyond rare. He then comments on how Dariel can spread his wings in a better environment, and it will be selfish for them to keep him in their village. Apparently, Center Guild is a top organization that any adventurer would dream of joining, and Vil agrees to write him a letter of recommendation. Dariel then notices Malika tearing up and tells Vil that they gave him a place to live when he had nowhere to go. This makes him decide to stay at the village, resulting in Malika giving him a hug, making it all worth it. Following that, Vil introduces Dariel to the other villagers and they all seem to like him. However, Kashida mocks Dariel for being an old fart, but Vil advises him to get along with a fellow adventurer. He starts off by boasting about his rank and walks away proudly. Vil tells Dariel that Kashida is the only adventurer in the village and is always full of himself. He then gives Dariel his first quest, which is to collect some herbs from the forest. Dariel agrees to take the quest. and Envel warns him about the monsters lurking in the forest and shows him the same monster that Dariel defeated to save Malika, shocking Envel. The body of the monster that Dariel defeated was discovered, and Envel mocks Kashida about how Dariel had already defeated the monster he was supposed to take care of. This makes Kashida frustrated, and he takes a quest and makes fun of Dariel for having a job to gather some herbs. Before Dariel leaves, Envel takes his hand and goes on to change his rank from E to D rank. Soon after, Malika arrives and offers to go along with Dariel on the quest. Outside, Dariel mentions how Malika didn't have to come along with him in such a dangerous forest. She replies that villagers often go to the village as well, but ask the adventurer to do the work when the location is a dangerous spot in the forest. While climbing a cliff, Malika mentions that she wanted to become an adventurer as well, which is the reason she was in the forest, as she had to collect herbs for a sick lady. She then asks him to overlook her selfishness for today, as she wants to repay him. Malika then suggests holding hands so they don't get separated. Lord Culture doesn't let go of this chance, and the two of them make their way forward while holding hands. With that being said, Dariel starts gathering the herbs, and Malika notices that he is gathering the wrong herbs. She puts some sense into him and asks him to only take one leaf so they can be harvested again. With that being said, Malika starts gathering other kinds of herbs and notices some deer footsteps, suggesting they take it down. Dariel then asks Malika if she couldn't have fought the monster on her own, and she disagrees, letting him know that she is afraid to fight. Furthermore, Malika asks Dariel to not call her so formally and just call her by her name. However, he fails to do so, making Malika punish Dariel by tightly squeezing him. He then notices a deer, but it looks more vicious than a normal one. It jumps over them and starts fighting another monster. This gives the two of them the opportunity to take out their weapons and hunt the deer. Later, the two of them bring both the deer and the monster back to the village, and Kashida, realizing that the monster is the same one from his quest, runs away in anger. Just like that, 3 days have passed since Dariel came to the village and has gotten used to it. Outside the guild, Dariel tries to shake hands with Kashida, but he refuses to do so and walks away. Afterward, he visits the guild where Malika greets him, but he ignores her and goes to talk to Envel. He informs Dariel that Kashida is a little pissed because Dariel stole 2 of his quests. But Malika argues that taking care of a monster on site is good practice, and Envel agrees. Following that, Envel shows him a quest that is supposed to be for C rank and higher. Malika wonders if it should be handled by a bigger guild. Envel agrees and informs them that it was only sent to them so their village would be on guard. Apparently, Kashida went to fight it, and Dariel wondered if that goblin-looking weakling would be alright on his own. Envel replies that the guild from the neighboring town has already formed a large cordon to deal with it. Malika then mentions how their adventurers would be invading their party's area. Dariel offers to go and bring back Kashida. Malika plans to come along, but Dariel refuses, and she eventually agrees. Malika gives him some medicines, and with that, he leaves. While walking through the forest, Dariel realizes that he is feeling uneasy and thinks about how he always regrets ignoring this feeling. Suddenly, he notices a destroyed trail and notices Kashida running with the snake following him. Dariel takes out his sword and gets ready to confront the monster. However, the snake ignores him and goes for Kashida. He tries attacking it with a bow, but they deal no damage. Just when it is about to attack Kashida, Dariel jumps in the air and manages to cut the snake's face. This results in the snake attacking Dariel with its tail, but he uses Protect to defend himself until his sword shatters. Dariel's quick thinking comes to assist him as he uses Hit and Sting on the sword pieces and throws it at the snake, making it swell and explode from the inside. With that being said, the snake is finally defeated, and Dariel notices Kashida in pain. Apparently, he was bitten and wondered if the snake was poisonous. Luckily, Dariel brought the anti-venom that Malika gave him, as she was sure that the monster would be poisonous. Afterward, Dariel puts some herbs on his wound and treats the wound, making Kashida wonder how he is so knowledgeable. Apparently, he learned about them during his herb collecting quests, and this all made him realize that everything is somehow connected. In the end, Kashida couldn't hold it in and started to cry. Back at the guild, Malika keeps on serving Dariel tasty food when Kashida arrives, calling Dariel his big brother. Envel wonders what happened, and Malika notices how fruity Kashida has been acting.
Huh?
Back at the demon castle, Bashbarza mocks Zebians for running away from the hero's party, but she argues about their party acquiring new and more powerful members. Bashbarza mentions how scouting is the job she should have done before attacking, and Zebians ends up blaming the assistant, resulting in him getting fired. Doroy comments on how Dariel was the best assistant, commenting how he always completed his work and was skilled in tactics. She remembers the times when Dariel used to help her out without others noticing. After losing Dariel, she realized that his strength was needed for them to win. This results in Bashbarza getting furious and refusing to bring him back. Kashida begins following Dariel all around, and he thinks about how Kashida has started taking gathering quests. After returning home, Malika gives Dariel an insane hug, leaving him in shambles. Later at the guild, Dariel asks Invul the reason there are so many empty houses in the village, and he asks Malika to bring him the map. Dariel goes to check up on her and finds Malika crying in the corner for what her hug did to him earlier. Nonetheless, she brings the map and Invul reveals that the village is the remains of a place that once was full of life. Moreover, beyond this village lies one of the most important sites for humans. Turns out, it's Mithril Mine, which is a metal from which weapons of unparalleled performance are made. Dariel thinks about how mithril is just as important to demons as they make magical items from it. Apparently, fights occurred for possession of the mine, and their village was a stopping place in the transport route. Some time ago, the demon took the mine and humans tried to fight back but failed and eventually gave up. From that point, the village's downfall started, and Invul's generation might be the last that knew about the mine. At night, Dariel thinks about the mine and decides to pay it a visit. The next morning, he arrives at the mine and wonders if he can negotiate to get a little bit of mithril. Dariel knows that he might be captured as he is not a part of the demon army anymore, but he still manages to sneak in. Eventually, he manages to go deep into the mine and starts yelling the demons' names. Just then, he runs into some Chiba anime figurines. They recognize Dariel as their master, and the demons take turns to get their head patted by him. Later, the demons inform Dariel that now they are forced to supply 4 times the normal amount of mithril. Dariel wonders who gave them such an absurd order, and the demons reply that it was some higher up. However, none of them remember his name and start arguing with each other about the correct name. Dariel realizes that they are talking about Bashbarza and wonders if these knocker demons offended him. Soon after, the knockers start crying and talking about how it was the best when Dariel was their master. Now, things have gotten really tough and they might not have any other choice but to run away. Even though the knockers don't work for him anymore, Dariel doesn't feel right to leave them be when they work so hard to mine the mithril. Just then, the knockers inform Dariel about the arrival of the soldiers. While Dariel is hiding behind the rock, he watches as the knockers try to argue with their new master. This results in the master warning him with a magic attack, calling them servants of demons and saying that his orders are the will of the 4 generals. Just then, one of the knockers attacks the master with a shovel and the other knockers start backing him up. This makes all the soldiers charge at the knockers in order to eliminate them. Just when they are about to attack, Dariel throws a shovel at them, making them confused. Dariel then reveals himself while wearing a mask, asking the soldiers if they feel proud eliminating some NPCs. He introduces themselves as a human adventurer and challenges the new master. Suddenly, Dariel starts smelling something. One of the knockers mentions that her plot is gone, and Dariel realizes that he is wearing it on his face, smelling her juices. Nonetheless, Dariel changes the topic by asking the soldiers to leave. The demon then mocks Dariel for fighting with a weapon and realizes the reason those knockers had the audacity to do something so bold. Dariel mentions how he commands the knockers and steals their pride from them. The demon laughs and comments on how he is the commander and receives orders from the 4 generals. With that being said, the demon orders his soldiers to attack the knockers and the humans. Surprisingly, Dariel requests another pair of plot and sheathes his blade with it this time. Simultaneously, the soldiers start chanting and Dariel begins attacking them before they even finish. The knockers join him as well, but the soldiers complete their chanting. But instead of using magic, he kicks the knocker, making Dariel realize that a soldier's job is to battle other soldiers. He then starts talking to the soldiers, reminding them of their honor and how eliminating a non-combatant makes them a murderer. However, the demon advises them to ignore Dariel and begin their chants. The soldiers start to hesitate but are forced to do so when he threatens them. Demon wonders if Dariel would be able to stop them, and the soldiers begin their chants. Suddenly, Dariel starts attacking them, making the demon realize that Dariel is attacking them in order of the shortest chant to the longest. The demon then asks the soldiers to change their magic type, but Dariel still manages to overwhelm them and eventually pins the demon down to the ground. The demon then confessed that he was not a part of the demon army and met Lord Bashbarza randomly, and he entrusted the workings of the mine to him. The demon then starts begging Dariel not to eliminate him as he is a non-combatant. However, Dariel argues that he ordered the soldiers to do the same when his job was to protect them. In the end, Dariel gives the demon a fresh cut and asks him to resign from this position. He instantly agrees and runs away, but the knockers are concerned about Dariel. But he is sure that things will be alright, and the knockers decide to follow Dariel from now on. Later that day, Dariel informs Invul that he has recaptured the mine, making him spill his coffee. He further requests to give protection to the knockers, and Invul eventually agrees. With the mine in the hands of the humans, they started exploring while knockers were given the job to act as the guides. Later, Invul mentions how the village was becoming a ghost town, but Dariel saved it. Just then, Malika comes running and Dariel saves her from falling down. She gives him the super hug as a thank you once again, leaving him in shambles. Bashbarza is chilling in his room, hearing praises from his parrot when Zebiance enters his room and notices something unique. Apparently, it is a compressed magic weapon that uses mithril as the main material. Magic energy hundreds of times stronger is stored inside to create a mega bomb. Zebiance comments on how it needs a great amount of mithril, but there is trouble at the mine. She further tells him that the mine has been stolen from them and the humans are already in full possession of it. An even more surprising fact is that someone wants to lodge a complaint against him, and that person is the Demon Lord himself. Later, the Demon Lord tells Bashbarza that he loves festivals and admires the pretty flowers. He also wants to have the court ladies dress up all pretty with accessories made from mithril. This brings him to the main point, and he asks Bashbarza about the mine. The Demon Lord questions Bashbarza about the reason he didn't stop building the bomb. Bashbarza tries to argue about him raising the mining, but the Demon Lord replies that the accessories were just an excuse to make him stop building the bomb, but he seems to be dumber than he thought. The Demon Lord then tells Bashbarza to fix his mistake. Bashbarza starts making excuses, but the Demon Lord forces him to apologize, and he eventually does. Furthermore, the Demon Lord mentions how he should have made Dariel help him out a little more. The reason his father served so well was because he always kept soldiers like Dariel close to him. After the meeting is over, the Demon Lord wonders what Bashbarza might do when Dariel isn't here anymore. Thinking about the Demon Lord calling Dariel's name makes Bashbarza really pissed. Elsewhere, Malika mentions how the village looks lively after a long time. She then comments on how their kids must see this as well and talks about how she will be sure to treasure her husband as well. After gathering the courage, Malika is about to confess when a fight breaks out and Dariel decides to go and check it out. Turns out Kashida was picking up a fight with someone who called adventurers from the countryside fakes. With that being said, their leader, Fitbitin, introduces himself, and after seeing Dariel's D rank, he concludes everything he heard about the mine getting recaptured by them as rumors. Fitbitin starts walking away but stops when Dariel mentions the name of the snake. He thinks that these adventurers were the ones to take care of it, but it still came to their area. Dariel then takes Kashida's side and advises the funky-looking geezer to mind his words. Hearing about him defeating the snake makes everyone surprised, and they start to praise Dariel while Fitbitin gets even more frustrated. Back at the guild, Kashida tells Malika about what happened, and she takes out her knife to make Fitbitin genderless. While Dariel tries to calm Malika down, Envil mentions how adventurers only have their ranks to prove their worth. Malika accidentally calls Dariel her husband and starts panicking. After that, Dariel asks Envil about the gathering that was supposed to take place, but he tells Dariel to take care of his daughter instead. The next day, Dariel asks the adventurer from Central Guild, Bisfrid, to negotiate with the Knockers. Turns out he tries, but the Knockers won't listen to anyone except for Dariel. Bisfrid is curious about why they only listen to Dariel, and he manages to make an excuse about how they think of him as their savior. After hearing that, Bisfrid asks Dariel to act as their intermediary, and Dariel eventually agrees. Later that day, Dariel asks them to listen to what Bisfrid has to say, and they immediately agree, surprising Bisfrid. While negotiations are taking place, Dariel decides to go home but runs into Fitbitin's party. Suddenly, a message from the Demon Lord for the Knockers appears, and Dariel runs away. He then manages to find the messengers, and Rizit is amongst them. He holds an attack in front of the adventurer he doesn't recognize and asks him to leave. However, after realizing it is Dariel, Rizit gives him a hug and mentions how everything has been a mess since he left. Rizit thinks that Dariel might be taking the side of humans because of the mean things he said to Dariel before he left. But Dariel clears up the misunderstanding and reveals that he is actually a human. This fact surprises Rizit, but he agrees to keep it a secret. Afterward, he mentions how everything has been a mess, and because of Bashbarza, the chain of command is on the verge of collapse. Because of the Demon Lord's scolding, Bashbarza is now taking his anger out on everyone he meets. Apparently, Rizit has the Demon Lord's permission to come to the mine and reconcile with the Knockers, as they are the precious foundation of the Demon King's army. He then asks Dariel to come back to the demon army, but he refuses as the 4 generals have already fired him. But Rizit mentions how Daroy wants him back. Following that, Rizit calls Dariel a friend and asks him to come back. However, Dariel apologizes and tells Rizit about the people who took him in when he was stealing food from the street dogs, and now he has to work for their sake. Suddenly, Rizit traps him in water, wanting to take him back forcefully, but Dariel renders his move and wonders if they would like to buy some mithril. At night, Dariel makes Rizit and Bisfrid sit next to each other, and he tells Bisfrid about how demons will surely attack to take the mine back. But if they sell the mithril to the demon army in a steady supply, they won't attack. Dariel plans to sell them at a price 4 times the market price, and Rizit agrees to buy it at that amount as well. However, Fitbitin disapproves and tries to attack Rizit, but Dariel manages to defend him. Bisfrid also scolds Fitbitin for making a fool out of himself and returns to the conversation. Dariel then mentions how he can trust Rizit, and Bisfrid agrees to sell mithril to the demon. After the deal is done, Dariel mentions how both demons and humans are precious to him. If Lord Granbarza hadn't taken him in, he wouldn't be alive right now. Dariel is reading a letter that states that they want him to establish a workshop to process mithril, since there used to be one in the village. Dariel realizes they want him to find it and revive it. He reaches his destination when Fitbitten opens the door, asking if he can handle the assignments of blacksmiths alone. Later that day, a blacksmith tells Dariel that the mithril mine is hugely beneficial to humans, as the security around the mine is the only aspect Campbell would bite. They are irritated because they lost that right. Dariel then realizes it was his fault they lost their jobs. Suddenly, Malika crashes on Dariel, telling him an old man visiting the village just grabbed her plot. Afterward, they go to the old man who is lying on the ground. Dariel confronts him, telling him he was out of line. The old man asks Malika why she would bring a loser adventurer to him. Malika gets out of control, telling him she will eliminate him if he insults Dariel again. The old man then says he can tell just by looking at that dull sword. The wobbling is evidence of over-sharpening. However, Malika tells him he is already super strong with that sword. The other day, he beat a bunch of soldiers to a pulp. The old man can't believe it and asks to see his hand. The old man then holds Dariel's hands, telling them he can predict the type and attributes of his aura. He suddenly gets shocked after seeing Dariel's skills, which are slash, sting, hit, and all of them are at optimal levels. The old man further says that besides the good news, he can't believe he gets to meet someone with an aura like this. The old fart then reveals his true identity. He is Mithril Blacksmith. Since he heard Mithril could be forged again, here he came. Later, he reveals that he was summoned here by direct orders from the Center Guild. Smith then stands up and tells them to go to the foundry now. Dariel tells him he can't go there since adventurers from Campbell are taking over the foundry now. Following that, they then go to Fitbitten, and the old man starts begging to allow him to go to the foundry. After quite a while of yapping, Fitbitten finally tells him to use the corner of the foundry and do his thing. However, the old man tells Dariel to watch and learn the Master Smith's superior technique. He then gives Dariel a light sword and tells him to channel his aura into it. Dariel then starts testing the weapon, slashing the tree in a blink. On their way, the old man asks Dariel to give the sword back, as it is not a good match for him. He then starts telling him his dream about how he wants to create a weapon using mithril that doesn't belong to any family of swords, spears, or axes. He then tells Dariel that he smuggled some mithril in the confusion and prepared a workshop as well. Soon after, Rizit joins them with some presents, and the old man asks if he is his demon friend. Rizit tells him that he heard the whole thing on the transmitter and can't be complicit in humans' mass production of weapons. The old man tells Dariel that the one taking back the mithril mine was a man from a lax village called Dariel. For a blacksmith who had touched mithril once, iron won't cut it. He then tells Dariel has shown him his new dream, and that's the reason why the perfect weapon is only for him. Furthermore, Fitbitten asks Dariel if he loves this village, further adding that he doesn't realize he is being fooled now. Fitbitten insists the village should be the sole beneficiary of their hard work. However, the Center Guild is on the verge of taking over the mine. He then urges Dariel to join him in resisting and fighting against Campbell City. Despite this, Dariel declines, expressing he has already caused too much pain to those he cares about. Fitbitten then leaves, saying he will be waiting at the village plaza tomorrow. It is clear this is a challenge for a duel. The blacksmith suspects Fitbitten might want the mine for himself. He comments that a D rank challenging a B rank is like a cat facing a lion. Rizit then asks, what if the duel is called off? The blacksmith replies, if the duel is dismissed, it means defeat for the one who proposed it. However, Dariel refuses to cancel the duel, and the old man tells him to come outside, wanting to teach him how to fight using mithril weapons. On the day of the duel, Fitbitten admires his courage not to run away and asks if he made something for himself as well. Fitbitten can't stop laughing when he sees Dariel pull out a knife. As the fight is about to start, Dariel realizes losing would mean abandoning the knockers who believe in him. Suddenly, Dariel throws a rock, startling Fitbitten and demanding he give up. When Fitbitten charges at him, Dariel swiftly strikes, knocking Fitbitten's weapon to the ground, shocking everyone. The old man's weapon is channeling his aura and changing the blade. He then destroys Fitbitten's weapon, defeating him since he doesn't have a weapon anymore. Later, everyone starts apologizing to Dariel, saying they'll make sure they and the Campbell Guild are strictly punished. However, Dariel tells everyone he wants the houses damaged in the earlier conflict to be repaired. They are all shocked by his request. Dariel then explains they all did what they thought was right to protect their homeland. When they ask if he wants to work at the Center Guild, Malika feels saddened. Later that day, in the sauna, Dariel realizes there are many things he doesn't know and thinks that if he goes to the Center Guild, he might discover more about those things. Suddenly, he gets distracted by a pair of talents entering the sauna. Dariel is in the sauna and finds himself touching Malika's plot. He decides to move his hand away, but the sensation is too good for him to let go. Malika eventually calls out his name and asks if he will be going to the Central Guild. She realizes that they might not have much time together and wants to talk to him as much as she can. Malika knew something like that might happen as he is a pretty awesome person. Ever since Dariel came, Luck's village has flourished, and because of Mithril coming back, the population is starting to increase as well. Her father and the others are always smiling, and this is the first time she has seen something like that. Malika then thanks Dariel and mentions how she will always be cheering him on. This makes Dariel think about how Malika always puts aside her own feelings, thinking that they're just selfish. He informs Malika that he might decline the offer from the Central Guild. The reason behind his decision is when he didn't have anywhere else to go. The Lux village took him in and he now loves the village. Furthermore, not seeing her Peaches every day would make him feel lonely. This makes Malika tear up and mentions how glad she is to hear this. Following that, Dariel holds her face and goes forward to kiss her. Meanwhile, at the Demon Lord's castle, Bashbarza notices his father doing rehabilitation by using great amounts of magic. He needs a moderate amount of movement to heal from the wound that the hero gave him. Later, Bashbarza goes to eat dinner with his father, who apparently doesn't know that Bashbarza fired Dariel. Grandbarza mentions how everyone was opposed to him retiring and leaving the positions to such spoiled puberty-struck teenagers. However, Dariel's presence was the thing that was able to stop the flow of objections. Grandbarza further reminds Bashbarza that his greatest stroke of luck was meeting Dariel. Bashbarza then starts reassuring his father that he has been treating Dariel really well and there is nothing for him to worry about. Suddenly, Grandbarza stands up and punches Bashbarza in the face. He mentions how many of the sons and nephews of demons have been dismissed as aides to the 4 generals. Grandbarza can't believe he would let a treasure like Dariel go. Eventually, he tells Bashbarza to bring Dariel back and ask for his forgiveness, but he refuses. Bashbarza tells his father that he will achieve everything on his own and will prove that the son of a lion is a lion as well. After breaking the bed with Malika, Dariel ends up falling from the stairs. Inval then notices how sucked up he looks and comments on how spending too much time in the sauna affected him. The whole day, Inval keeps on giving Dariel side eyes and eventually asks him to take care of some quests. Malika's mother then asks for his help as well, and the way she talks makes Dariel realize that she knows. After she leaves, Dariel starts thinking about all the things that happened yesterday and wonders if he should ask Inval for permission to marry his daughter. Just then, he notices Inval standing behind him with an axe. The two of them go inside and Inval mentions how he wants Dariel to become the mayor of the village. But Dariel argues that it is a really big responsibility for a small fellow like him. However, Inval replies that it is exactly the way a person grows and comments on how he will be happy to pass this work on to him. Dariel eventually agrees and then asks Inval to let him marry his daughter. Surprisingly, Inval agrees, and this moment brings tears to Malika's eyes. He then asks Malika the same question and she ends up giving him the brutal hug, but Dariel manages to counter it this time. Dariel eventually became the mayor, and a year passed. The village has grown even bigger and is even more prosperous than it was before. Dariel is present at Smith's grave and thanks him for teaching him all the things he did. He then returns home and picks up his son, Gran, whose name is similar to Grandbarza's name. Suddenly, Gashida comes running and informs Dariel that the hero is coming to their village. He then asks Inval if the hero is supposed to be someone awesome. Inval informs him that the hero is someone who bears the duty of defeating the Demon King. Only one person can claim that title and is the strongest of adventurers. Dariel thinks about how he is a murderer in the eyes of demons and how he started eliminating all the demons, no matter who they were. He wonders if the hero is coming to take care of him. Just then, Inval mentions how they need to prepare to show them their hospitality, and he leaves the work to Dariel. Later, everyone is waiting for the hero's arrival, and then a pretty girl exits the carriage instead of a white-beard geezer. The hero, Lady, introduces herself and Dariel questions her about the previous hero. Lady replies that he fought the demons and was severely injured, resulting in his retirement. She then mocks him for judging people based on their appearance, making Dariel wet his boxers a little. Lady then mentions how they would want to request a specific weapon made from mithril. Dariel then notices the notes on her hand, realizing that she has been cheating all along. Back at the guild, Gran keeps on crying until he looks at Lady and she ends up picking him up. Gran, just like his father, starts burying himself in her plot, giving his father a sight he couldn't forget. Sadom and Sesha welcome Dariel back and wonder if Lady is still present in her room. They then knock on her door, only for a tired hero to step out, and Sadom reminds Lady that it is Dariel's house, making her go back in and later come out well prepared. Later, she informs Dariel that one of their objectives is mithril weapons and asks Dariel to allow them as soon as possible. Fenwil also mentions how Lady will be seeing mithril for the first time and leaves everything to Dariel. Later, he takes them to the only forge that processes mithril, and they are all surprised to see it. Dariel then hands over a mithril sword to Sadom, and just when she starts passing aura, Sadom starts experiencing a new kind of sensation. Lady wants to give it a try as well, but Sesha takes his turn first. She then starts asking Dariel about made-to-order items, and he calls Sakai their #1 swordsmith. He thinks of Sesha as the hero and starts holding his hand, only to realize that the hero is someone else. Apparently, Sakai knows many tricks to make the ladies come again for more, and he starts holding Lady's hand in a weird manner, managing to find her aura type. Later, Lady reveals her second objective, which is to find a fourth member of their party. Kashida asks them to leave this to him, and he schedules a selection tournament for the hero's party. Envil mentions how a new champion will be born from their village. Lady is a little concerned about their enthusiasm, and Dario replies that they must be pumped to eliminate the Demon Lord. The selection match will be 3 versus 26, and the hero's party will be using wooden swords and pot lids. Nonetheless, the tournament starts and the hero's party manages to bring them down easily. Lady is disappointed when suddenly an arrow comes her way. It is Kashida, and she runs towards him, mocking his aim. Kashida uses aura to control his arrows, but Lady cuts them down. She then gets a little too excited and uses a bit much power. But Dario throws an apple at her, bringing Lady back to her senses. Just then, Kashida comes crying and apologizes for being a failure, but Dario comments on how he is their strongest adventurer. Seeing that, Lady suggests having a battle with Dario, as it seems to her that he is stronger than Kashida. She suddenly attacks Dario, but he manages to block and pin her sword down. Lady gets out and Dario manages to get hold of her leg, but she loses her socks to get back at Dario. He somehow jumps away and Lady attacks him, which chops off a mountain. Sesha notices that she is fighting for real, and Lady ends up taking out her real sword. Seeing her technique reminds Dario of the previous hero, and Dario hits her with his own attack that makes Lady realize that he's strong. The three of them then ask Dario to join their party, but he refuses as he has work. Back at home, Dario is trying to feed Gran and starts imagining questionable stuff while looking at the feeder. Just then, Lady arrives and questions if he really won't join them. Dario replies that he wants to see his son grow up, which is why he can't accompany them. He further mentions that he is worried about Envil's back pain, making Lady ask if he considers those things more important than defeating the Demon King. Sadom tries to calm Lady down, but she furiously leaves the room. On the other hand, Dario thinks about his time with Doroi when she came to have tea with him. Apparently, she wanted to watch the smiling citizens and asked Dario to protect those smiles from the invaders. This makes him think how he can never fight the demons. The next day, Sadom and Lady are stalking Dario by hiding in a box. Dario eventually enters a building where Sakai is sulking on his own. Sakai comments on how his master used to advise him to do the best for the adventurers, and Dario agrees to talk about his master a bit. Afterward, Envil is cleaning the guild, and Dario takes the duty from him and starts cleaning instead. Later, the townsfolk start thanking him for helping them out earlier. Following that, he runs into Malika, who is on a walk with Gran. The two of them return home while Lady stays confused. At night, Sadom wonders if the importance of something is different for people, and maybe the village looked as important to Dario as the hero's duty. Soon after, she calls Dario out and questions how he acquired the same technique that the previous hero had. Dario tries to make excuses, but she doesn't believe him and mentions that those who possess a Sky Rend are leagues above the rest. The previous hero didn't really have Sky Rend, and it was called Emperor's Sky Rend instead. But the skill he used was exactly that, which makes Dario surprised as he didn't know it was that important. Dario replies that she didn't know that, and Lady asks his real identity, attacking him and wondering how he doesn't know something that everyone else does. She further comments on how a skilled fighter like him should defend humanity. Dario argues that the demons fight a defensive fight and won't attack as long as the hero doesn't. This results in Lady mentioning how the demon turned the previous hero into a monster. She remembers how the hero advised Lady to not become like him, as his happy days were the ones spent with his wife and son. One day, everything ended when Basilia of the 4 generals raided them. He wanted no one to feel the way he felt after losing his family. Dario then tells Lady of the time he fought soldiers at the mine, and they hesitated to eliminate the non-combatants and even sent a whole demon corps to gain the trust of the knockers. In the end, Dario doesn't want them to fight as he has family on both sides. Lady realizes that he is really kind and mentions how she doesn't need weapons or a 4th member but a strong heart. Eventually, she decides to appoint him as her teacher. According to her, no one is stronger than him than the previous hero, which is why she wants to be trained by Dario. He thinks that this act could be disloyal to the demon army, but by training her, he can keep an eye on Lady. Dario then leaves the decision-making to his cultured mind and starts examining her plot, finally agreeing to train her. On the other hand, Doroi is disappointed as she can't find Dario, commenting on how Bashbarza and Zebians are not present as well. The next day, Rizit came to his house and Dario invited him inside while Zebians watched them from a tree. Rizit is playing with Gran and comments on how he looks like his dad. Dario mentions that Lady is in the neighboring town and they won't have to worry about her. He then notices Rizit's new medal and asks him about it. Turns out he is now a special envoy and thanks Dario for what he did. The job of a special envoy didn't exist before because they had Dario to take care of things. Suddenly, Zebians appears, surprising the two of them. She ends up sitting on top of Rizit while he enjoys her cake touching his back. She mentions how Rizit kept Dariel's location a secret even when Doroy had been searching for him so desperately. Soon after, Malika arrives and decides to bring something for the guest. Zebiance ends up calling him incompetent in front of Malika, resulting in her firing a cork that nearly misses Zebiance, making her tremble. Turns out her real objective is to search for Mithril, and as Rizit wouldn't mention anything, she took it upon herself to do a little bit of searching. Rizit apologizes to Dariel, but he replies how Zebiance is a great mage of wind and that one wouldn't notice her tailing them. With that being said, Zebiance orders Dariel to hand over all the mithril he possesses, but he refuses to do so. His reasoning is that Rizit has shown good faith and determination which led to their deal and he can't simply hand it over. This statement makes her furious, but the look at Malika's face makes Zebiance tremble. As soon as the three of them go outside, Zebiance attacks a tree and comments on how she will have to forcefully take it from them. Dariel suggests Rizit stays out of it and dashes towards Zebiance, managing to defeat her. But she comments on how this round doesn't count and suggests redoing it. However, that results in her defeat as well and she keeps on wanting to do it again and again. In the end, she decides to blow away the whole village by using a geostorm. Luckily, Dariel manages to use the sky rend that swallows up the geostorm, resulting in her falling down. He tries to catch her midair but starts falling down as well, only to be caught by Rizit. Apparently, Dariel ended up with Zebian's hand, making her cry and threaten to tell Malika about it. Having no other choice, Dariel apologizes and agrees to give her some mithril. He then mentions his price and Zebiance decides to buy them. The two of them then shake hands and she asks if his weapon is made from mithril as well. She then asks for a similar weapon as well and Dariel takes her to Sakai, who accepts her order. Just then, Dariel realizes that the hero will be returning and it would be bad if they ran into one of the four generals. He asks Sakai to take as long as he can to listen to Zebian's order and runs away. He then continues to delay their return and asks Lady to practice her swing 100,000 times. Following that, he notices Sakai manipulating Zebiance to buy more and more of their stuff, making him admire Sakai's skills. Eventually, Lady finishes up her swings and requests to go get cleaned up. Back at the sauna, Sakai apologized as he couldn't hold her for longer. Inside, Lady enters the sauna where Zebiance is already present. The two of them sit together and Lady recognizes Zebiance instantly. Dariel instantly enters the sauna, accidentally touching both of their talents. They both slap him at the exact same time and Malika makes them all sit together at the dinner table. Zebiance wonders who the blondie brat is, and Lady mentions that she is a hero and they have fought before. Lady then asks Dariel the reason he is so familiar with one of the four generals, and he eventually confesses that he is a human raised by the demons. Malika comments on how he told her this after proposing as well, but it didn't matter to her as she still loved him the same way. Afterward, Zebiance asks for another serving, but Lady snatches her plate and asks her to return to their territory. Things start heating up until Malika arrives and suggests the two of them battle to make things clear. Dariel also agrees but makes them promise to not eliminate each other. Lady agrees but Zebiance doesn't want to. He asks her to forget about Mithril then, making Zebiance agree. The duel will take place tomorrow and Zebiance decides to fill her stomach to be prepared and Lady decides to do the same. Afterward, Zebiance decides to sleep but Lady comments on how she was to soak in hot water. She likes the idea and the two of them end up racing to the hot bath. The next day, Dariel notices Sakai amongst them as well and Lady informs them that the condition to win the battle was a weapon made from mithril, so the two of them forced him to get things done. With that being said, the two of them get prepared and the battle commences. Both of them begin to fight on an equal level and Malika brings Dariel some lunch to enjoy the fight. They are evenly matched but Lady's attack throws Zebiance on the ground. However, she easily manages to get back up and powers up an attack of her own. The collision makes both Dariel and Sadom put up a barrier to protect themselves. Gran wakes up and after noticing some hot sweaty baddies, he runs towards them. Suddenly, landsliding occurs and Dariel protects Gran while Zebiance blows away the cliff. They are glad that Gran is safe and seeing him happy makes Dariel think that Gran thought the two of them were playing with him. Both Lady and Zebiance start laughing and start discussing their battle. Zebiance starts calling Lady her friend and they agree to go to the bath together. Seeing the two of them makes Dariel believe that humans and demons can coexist together. Sesha informs Dariel that during a quest, he ran into a really amazing individual. Turns out, that man is the previous hero, Alancel. Zebiance, who is looking for snacks, runs into Alancel, letting him know that his flat chest is visible. Dariel freaks out and apologizes to Alancel, later telling Zebiance that he is the former hero. After finding out who he is, Zebiance gets nervous as well. Just then, a little kid arrives and Alancel shakes her hands. Soon after, many other children come running and he starts playing with them as well. Now there is a queue of people waiting to meet him. Following that, Dariel invites him inside and he shakes Zebiance's hands as well. She finds him to be a great man, but Dariel warns her to be careful as Alancel can sense magical energy as well. Later, Dariel introduces himself as the mayor, and Alancel mentions how he heard about Lady troubling him for quite some time. Lady apologizes to Alancel, but Alancel apologizes in return for being too hasty in sending her off. He decided to teach her everything that he couldn't, and Dariel thought that this was the perfect chance for Zebians to escape. Before Dariel leaves, Alancel mentions the suspicious presence he has been feeling and points toward Gashida, who is stalking them from the window. Soon after, everyone has gathered to watch Lady train and she starts attacking Alancel, but he manages to dodge her flawlessly, all while signing some autographs. Eventually, he manages to bring her down using a single hand. He then praises Lady for improving her sword skills, and she informs him that her training with Dariel is the result. This makes Alancel curious, and he asks Dariel to spar with him. The villagers start downplaying their mayor while Gashida tries to stand up for him and ends up crying. Having no other choice, Dariel agrees but instantly realizes how terrifying Alancel is. This results in Dariel buying some time by proposing to have lunch, and Alancel agrees. Following that, the four of them enjoy some rice balls, which Alancel seems to like really much but starts to struggle as his rusty old body can't handle the oily food. He then comments on how long it has been since he ate a packed lunch, reminding Dariel about what Lady previously told him. Meanwhile, Zebians keeps a look at them but decides to stay away as she promised. She then decides to go home but changes her mind soon after. Elsewhere, Alancel takes out his weapon, throwing it away, and it almost strikes Zebians. She then appears in front of Zebians and takes out his knife, but Dariel manages to defend her. He asks Dariel to continue their spar later as he has to eliminate the demon right now. However, Dariel mentions how he can't allow him to take the life of someone within the village. Alancel then starts walking towards Dariel and dodges his attack and sends Dariel flying away. Luckily, he manages to take Zebians away with him as well. Alancel attacks them with a wooden stick and Dariel barely defends himself. Lady and Gashida come running, but Dariel advises them to stay away. Afterward, he walks towards Dariel and suggests he become the hero so they can tear the demon race up by the roots. But Dariel refuses, resulting in Alancel taking out his weapon. Eventually, both of them fire Skyrim towards each other, and Alancel's attack seems to overpower Dariel's. Lady tries to stop Alancel but gets scared after looking into his eyes. Alancel then wonders why Dariel protects the demons, and he replies that he doesn't want anyone to get hurt. He replies that both races have been fighting each other and mocks Dariel for aiming for world peace. Dariel further mentions that he is doing it for himself as it hurts him when someone he knows gets hurt. Furthermore, Dariel talks about Alancel losing his wife and child and tells him that Zebians is also precious to him and it would hurt him if he were to lose her. Alancel wonders why he takes the side of demons, and Dariel replies that he was raised by them. Elsewhere, Granbarza appears in front of the demon lord, who informs Granbarza that his form is a mirror that reflects himself back to him. Granbarza then asks the demon lord for a royal command for an immediate change of personnel. Apparently, his disappointment of a son has made a series of mistakes and has not abandoned his duties as one of the 4 generals. The demon lord suggests lowering his responsibilities, but Granbarza wants him to be fired. He then tells Granbarza that he likes Dariel more than his own son. This reminds Granbarza when Bazelia went to find a weapon that would surely eliminate the hero, and it turned out to be a baby. He then picks up the baby, informing him that he has become one of the 4 generals, and names the kid Dariel. Back in the present, Granbarza mentions that they both are precious to him, and the demon lord informs him about Dariel's current whereabouts. Elsewhere, Dariel also informs Alancel that Bazelia found him and entrusted him to Granbarza. Alancel then realizes something and asks Dariel how old he is. Dariel replies that he is 33, and Alancel hugs him, calling him his son. He then elaborates that 33 years ago, his wife was eliminated by Bazelia, and he thought that his son was eliminated as well. Furthermore, the 4 aura attributes are passed from parent to child, and everything proves that he is his son. Suddenly, both Alancel and Granbarza attack each other, and he steps down, commenting on how much Dariel has grown. Everyone is shocked to see Granbarza and Alancel facing each other. Dariel interferes and stops them from fighting each other, telling Alancel that after hearing he is his son, he's confused. He further tells him that Granbarza is the one who raised him. Granbarza asks Dariel if he has learned it already. He realized that he was human, and when he turned 5 and couldn't use magic, it worried him. He researched and began to think that he is human. After hearing Granbarza's words, Dariel replies with heartfelt sincerity, expressing that for as long as he can remember, Granbarza has always been by his side. He goes on to convey that a lifetime would never suffice to repay his deep gratitude. Dariel then reveals that the strength he has gained is directly due to the time he has spent with Granbarza. Alancel drops his weapon after seeing them hugging, saying all that time was supposed to be his. He accuses Granbarza of stealing it from him. Hate and rage are what made him this strong. However, Grand Barza moves forward, telling him to send hate and rage his way instead. Alancel then picks up his weapon while enraging his aura. He tells him that his journey of revenge is supposed to come to an end this way, and they both get enraged. Suddenly, Malika comes flying and splashes a bucket of water on them, telling them that she doesn't know their circumstances and asking not to show their ugliness of fighting to their grandson. She then shows a child, telling them this is Dariel and her son and that both of them are his grandpas. Dariel on the side realizes that the two greatest heroes in history are there and she calls them Grandpa. He goes to Grand Barza telling him if he wishes for his happiness, then he must live. Afterward, he tells Alancel that his time as a parent may not return, but if they were a grandfather they should spend some time with the child. Alancel gets the flashbacks, and he then holds the child, making everyone emotional. Meanwhile, Bashbarza enters the hall and inquires with a servant about the advance party arranged to celebrate his impending status as the greatest of the 4 generals. He asks if everyone is running late, only to learn that none of them are attending at all. The servant goes on to inform him that Grand Barza has gone to see the Demon King, adding that things might have been different if his aide, Dariel, had been present. Upon hearing Dariel's name, Bashbarza flies into a rage, destroying everything in his path. He vows to incinerate Dariel so thoroughly that not even his ashes would remain. Meanwhile, Alancel and Grand Barza play with a child, and Dariel is on a call with Rizit. After dinner, they all become a bit intoxicated. Dariel watches from the side as Alancel and Grand Barza fondly reminisce. Alancel expresses gratitude to Grand Barza, acknowledging that he has been raised by a wonderful father. He extends his hand, thanking Grand Barza for nurturing his son into the fine man he has become. Later that night, Dariel apologizes to Malika for causing a lot of worry, but she tells him that if Alancel hadn't been his father, she would have punched him. The next morning, Lady asks Alancel to train her again today. However, Dariel tells her the sorrow of those close to her and everything that happened to Alancel. She has held all that inside herself, and he further tells her to understand now that not all demons are bad. Alancel tells them that the Demon King is the source of all the misfortune in the world. Even if they defeat the Demon King, an age of peace will begin. Alancel then shares with them that the Demon King holds the greatest power in the world, and if they defeat him, they could potentially claim it. Dariel is puzzled and seeks clarification, explaining that he has heard magic was a gift bestowed upon demons by the Demon King. He asks Grand Barza if this story is true, and Grand Barza confirms there is indeed a legend that the Demon King had granted magic to them long ago. Dariel finds it awkward to consider approaching the king himself for confirmation. Grand Barza further tells them that the Demon King is still the same, since the moment he took up his post. There has been no change, so he may be immortal. Lady realizes to think that he transcends other beings so greatly. Alancel tells her to give up on the challenge as the battle is steeped in human greed. Lady tells him that even if she were to quit, the battle would continue. Suddenly, they get someone banging on the door and calling out to Dariel. After opening the door, it is Bisfrid who tells him that the mythical mine is under attack by a monster. Dariel then tells Gashida to assemble a squad and follow them. He then asks Zebians to transport them. After reaching there, Lady realizes it is a monster they have never seen before. While the flame beast Salamandra keeps attacking, Dariel decides to go and check on the knockers. Alancel also joins him, expressing his desire to look out for his son, whom he has finally reunited with. Meanwhile, Lady informs Sadom of their intention to bring Salamandra to its knees. They advance together to attack him, with Zebiance using her ability to throw them toward the monster. When Lady fails in her attack, Zebiance swiftly comes to her rescue. Salamandra then blows a fire attack on them, but Sadom uses her guard to stand in front of them. Suddenly, Grand Barza controls the fire flow and decides to face him on one. On the other hand, Dariel tells Zaza to wait a little longer so he can deal with Salamandra first. They then advance towards the beast together. Alancel and he use their abilities to launch attacks against it, which knocks the beast onto the ground. He then stands in front of Salamandra. They both then stare at each other for a while and Salamandra's eyes glow red. Then suddenly Salamandra flies away. Lady and the others quickly gather around him. She then tells him that she feels a sense of hatred coming from the beast. Dariel realizes that he feels something entirely different, a deep sense of nostalgia. After a moment, Grand Barza announces that he will be returning to the Demon King's castle. He asks Zebiance to carry him since he used up all his magical energy earlier. After that, they set off to save Zaza, and Dariel feels a bit of regret for not being able to save everyone. Sensing his distress, Alancel gently reminds him that he doesn't have to bear the weight of everything on his own. Suddenly, someone from them tells them that one of the guild workers is missing. Alancel tells Dariel to leave things to him. On the other hand, Grand Barza goes to confront Bashbarza and is shocked to see him and asks him if he has entered the Room of Secrets. After hearing Bashbarza's joke, Grand Barza grows furious and smashes a wall in his anger. Zebiance, curious about their conversation, asks them about the Room of Secrets. Bashbarza explains that it is a hidden chamber within the Demon King's castle. He further tells her that since ancient times, every hex ever developed has been stored within, as hexes are far more powerful than any other magic known to the world. Their ancestors feared them and they sealed the hexes away. Granbarza says to Bashbarza that among those hexes is a technique for making a magical beast that serves him. After sensing a trace of his will in the salamandra he had encountered at the mine, he turns to Bashbarza and asks if during the year he was traveling, was he searching for magical beasts? He further tells him that, unlike Dariel, he was born with such a talent for magic, so why does he let that power go to waste? He then asks Granbarza if he was with the hero and the other humans and further tells him that he saw him through the eyes of the magical flame beast, Salamandra. Granbarza asks him if he had used hex power, a dangerous magic that weakens the body and erodes the mind. To think he'd resort to hexes while serving as one of the 4 generals, endangering their people, he is not worthy of his title. Enraged, Granbarza attacks him just as he summons Salamandra. Meanwhile, a face emerges from the cave and asks Dariel if he knows who he is. Terrified, Dariel tries to run away, but the face blocks the cave entrance, trapping him and repeating the question. He then finally tells him that he is the one Dariel is finding. He tells Dariel that it's his fault that his body has been burned by his old friend Salamandra. He then tells him to bring forth a piece of his body. Dariel then takes out his weapon. In the reflection he can see his body. He admires it and as a reward, he releases some of the mithril restrictions on his weapon. Before leaving, he tells Dariel that his name is Gigantomachia. Afterwards, Malika gives a ring to Dariel, telling him it will protect him. Suddenly, Bashbarza alongside Salamandra appears in front of him. He uses Granbarza range annihilation magic. Alancel further says that depending on how it's used, that technique can steal away the user's life. However, Dariel tells Bashbarza to calm down and to talk. Bashbarza declares that he will first eliminate Malika and then burn Dariel's village to the ground. As he heads toward the village, Dariel intervenes, wielding his weapon to stop him. Meanwhile, Zebiance uses her powers to knock Salamandra away. Dariel then tells everyone to handle Salamandra. While he is battling with Bashbarza, Dariel tells Bashbarza that if he is troubled over the mithril mine he can apologize. Dariel asks him why he resents him so much, telling him that he had a dream which was to bring the human-demon war to an end. He further says that the reason he had Salamandra attack the mithril mine was to lure him out. He will clear the failures, he will eliminate the heroes, bring humanity to ruins, and bring this conflict to an end. Bashbarza uses his flame ability and then attacks Dariel, knocking him to the ground, further telling him that for the last year, he had searched through the hexes in the Room of Secrets, and he finally discovered this. After much research, he acquired the skill to manage and force Salamandra to submit to him. Bashbarza moves his hand forward, generating a blast, but Dariel manages to defend it using his ability. This causes a lot of damage, making him even angrier. Sadom puts a huge barrier around them and Kashida attacks it with his bows, dealing some damage to the Salamandra. Meanwhile, Alancel comments on how he is standing. Suddenly, Dariel finds himself looking at Bashbarza's memories and he thinks that the synchronization magic might be spilling over. One day, Bashbarza was waiting for his father when he brought another boy along. Granbarza called Dariel Bashbarza's older brother, but it made him really sad as Dariel spent more time with Granbarza than he could. Bashbarza then insisted on joining the demon army, but his mother told him that he would be joining the magic academy. He eventually graduated with a top position and thought that he could join his father, but her mother didn't want him to. Later, Granbarza finally assigned Dariel to Bashbarza, but he only wanted to stand aside his father. Back in the past, Dariel wonders what he should do now and Bashbarza steps back. He used to be worried about him and how he knows another person just like him. The previous hero believed that his son, Dariel, was stolen by Lord Granbarza. Dariel also felt alone because he was never a part of a real family and the least he could do was not cause problems for Granbarza. However, he finally got Granbarza as his dad and Bashbarza as his younger brother. Dariel then tells Bashbarza to let him support him just like he supported him in the past. This results in Bashbarza's transformation slowly undoing itself. Dariel then puts forward his hand, but before Bashbarza can hold it, his eye starts to hurt as Salamandra starts consuming Bashbarza's wine. The Demon Lord thinks that he can still fix his keeps on trying to escape those crimes. In the end, the Demon Lord decides to banish Bashbarza just like what he did to Dariel. He accepts the punishment and steps out where he runs into Granbarza. Later, both son and father visit the guild and Dariel welcomes them inside. While having speechless, Dariel then notices that Gran wants to go to Bashbarza and asks him to hold on to his son. Shockingly, Gran says Bashbarza's name, reminding him of the time he was introduced to Dariel. Bashbarza then mentions how he would like to atone for his sins because they all are his brother's friends. Kashida starts bawling and Lady mentions how Bashbarza was trying to find his own answers and finally found them. Malika then mentions that this was the first time Gran said someone's name and how this is a day to remember. This gives Dariel an idea and he asks the painter to make a portrait of them. Following that, all of them eat and drink, enjoying their night together. Early in the morning, Bashbarza decides to leave, telling Dariel that he wants to return everything to those he had hurt, and after that, he plans to travel the world. Link below if you want a wife like her as well. Make sure to like and subscribe. See you guys in the next video.